Hey, this is Mr. Coker with Algebra Lesson 3-2, the quadratic formula. So, the last lesson, 3-1, we talked about solving quadratics by factoring. Now we're talking about a different way of solving the quadratic formula. And this is my favorite because it works every time. With factoring, it can be faster, but we cannot always factor. So sometimes we can get an answer, but it's unfactorable. So we have to use a different method, and the quadratic formula, in my opinion, is easily the best. So this is a formula. Negative b plus or minus. Notice where it says you've got a plus sign over a minus sign. I'll show you what that means exactly in a moment when I do this first example. But it means plus or minus. We typically get two answers, and it's the square root b squared minus 4, always a 4, times a times c divided by 2 times a. It's always 2 times a. So the 4 and the 2 are always part of the formula. First thing we want to do, 2x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0. First thing we want to do is make sure that it is equal to 0, and it is. That means it's in standard form, and we're ready to go. I want to find the a, b, and c values, and hopefully you remember. The a value is the coefficient of x squared. If you look at that, the coefficient of x squared, it is 2. So that's the a value. The b value is the coefficient of x. Now we don't have one listed, we just have an x. When that's the case, the coefficient is 1. So b equals 1. And then c is negative 6. Notice it's the negative sign. It's important that you include the negative sign, because if you don't, you'll get the wrong answer. So 2, 1, negative 6. Now we can solve. We can set up the formula and then solve it. First of all, we have negative b. Notice the negative sign. The negative sign I'm always going to put first, and then I'm going to put the number. So I have negative 1 plus or minus b square root b squared, so b squared is 1 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 6. Make sure you put the negative. If you don't put the negative, you'll get a wrong answer. And it's over 2 times 2. So now I would suggest you students, if you have a calculator, put this whole thing in a calculator. Always start with a plus and then do the minus. Now you don't have to. I vastly prefer to do it. Do not risk doing the same problem 2 times in a row. And here's what I mean. We have to do, for plus or minus, what that means is one time we're going to put negative 1 plus everything else, and one time we're also going to do negative 1 minus everything else. That's why I said you often get 2 answers, usually get 2 answers doing this. So what we want to do here, and the reason I say do plus first is just for consistency. If you want to do minus first every time, that's fine, but do one or the other. I like plus because plus comes first in the problem. We say plus or minus. But okay, if you don't have a calculator, the first thing you want to do is simplify this, which is called the discriminant. That's what's inside the square root. So if I have a calculator, I'm just going to say put all of this at one time in the calculator. Hit your fraction button if you have it. Put all of this on top, all of this on bottom, hit enter, and it will give you your first solution. And then do it again, changing the sign right here. If you don't have a fraction button to use parentheses. Put parentheses on top, divided by parentheses on bottom, hit enter, and it will give you your solution. And then do it again with changing the sign. Again, you may not have the a calculator handy, so you may prefer, or you may just want to do it by hand, or you may have to for some reason. So maybe a teacher tells you to. I won't, but maybe another teacher will. So I'm going to start by simplifying the discriminant. 1 squared is 1. 4 times 2 times 6. No, or negative 4 times 2 times negative 6. Well, what is that? It's 48. It's plus 48. What's 2 times 2? That, of course, is 4. Notice that this looks like a much easier problem now, I hope. So inside parentheses, we have 1 plus 48. That's 49. And I'm going to finish the rest of this side, and then I'll erase it before going to the next problem. So negative 1 plus or minus, what's the square root of 49? Well, hopefully you know that that is 7. Now this is where the plus or minus comes in play. I'm going to do a plus version and a minus version. I'm first going to do negative 1 plus 7. Negative 1 plus 7 is positive 6. And that's over 4, which simplifies to 3 over 2. The second one, negative 1 minus 7, excuse me, that will give us negative 8 over 4, which becomes negative 2. And those are your two answers. And those work. So the quadratic formula will work for you on both of those. And now, again though, if you can, put this in the calculator, because it's so much easier, quicker. And I'm going to erase this, so pause it if you need to. If you need to pause it, go ahead. And I'm going to erase this. And we'll go to the second problem. Now, the reason I picked the second problem, that I wrote it as I did, you'll see why in a moment. So again, first thing I want to do is, does it equal 0? The answer is yes, so it is in standard form. Secondly, find A, B, and C. This time, what's the coefficient of x squared? There's no number in front of it, so it's a 1. Second number, the coefficient of x, it's not 2, it's negative 2. That's the b value, and then the constant is 3. Now I'll set this up in the quadratic formula. Now, remember, it starts with a negative. Now, in a calculator, I often will suggest to students, if you want to, go ahead and write negative 2. You can put the negative twice. And what the calculator will do is realize that a negative means a positive. So if you want to just put it as positive, you can. You can put it as a positive 2. Because the negative, this negative and this negative cancel out and become a positive. So I'm going to put plus or minus. Now inside the square root, here's what you should not do, because it will give you the wrong answer. In your calculator, don't do this. Don't put negative 2 squared. Because what the calculator is going to do is follow order of operations, and it's going to do exponent. There's no parentheses, so it's going to do exponent, and then it will assume this is multiplication. So do one of two things. Either, missed that one up. Either put the parentheses, put a parentheses around the -2 and then put your square like this, or the other option, and one that I usually suggest to students, at least once you get used to the quadratic formula, is just you put a positive version of it, is that anything squared is positive, so whatever the b value is, essentially put the absolute value of that. That way you don't risk making a mistake. So I'm just going to put a positive 2, 4 times 1 times 3 over 2 times 1. So 2 times a is 2 times 1. Again, you can put this in a calculator or not. If you don't want to put it, if you put it in a calculator, it will give you the answer quickly. If you don't put it in a calculator, though, this is what will happen. Again, I'm going to simplify first. 2 plus or minus 4, 2 squared is 4, and -4 times 1 times 3 is -12. So we have 4 minus 12 over 2 times 1. Hopefully, when you see this, you're like, something here is going to be wrong. Doesn't look right. Hopefully you notice the discriminant has a problem. Here's the problem. 4 minus 12 is -8. What's the square root of -8? There's not one. So unless you're dealing with imaginary numbers, which by the way in this class we are not. You might in Algebra 2, but in this class we are not dealing with imaginary numbers. Therefore, when you get to this point, the discriminant, the number inside the square root, is negative. It has no solution. That means when you graph it, if you graph this if you graph this quadratic, it would look something like, generally like this. And it would not touch the x-axis. Therefore, it has no solution. It never has an x value. It doesn't have an x value when y equals 0 because it doesn't touch the x-axis. It has no x-intercept, no roots, no zeros, no solutions, well, no solution. If you put this in a calculator, it will say domain error. If you get a domain error, well, you've got the wrong answer. So, I mean, I misspoke. Please don't hold me to that. I'm at the end of the video. I'm not re-recording it. So, if you get a domain error, it's correct. It's no solution. It's probably correct, but double check your numbers just to make sure. And here's why I say that. The first one says it's negative. Remember, C was -6. If you would put a +6 in place of -6, you would have gotten a domain error. You would have gotten no solution, and it would be wrong. On this one, if you put let's say a -3 instead of a +3, you would have not gotten an error, and you would have gotten the wrong answer. You would have gotten a positive discriminant. So be careful with your signs, because most of the time when people miss are using quadratic formula and missing a problem, it's usually because they got a sign wrong somewhere. So just be careful with your signs. Same thing with this. Had this had a solution, if you put a -2, you would have got the wrong answer. You need to have a +2 out here. For the same reason. So be careful with your signs. Make sure that you get practice at setting up the equation, and make sure that you have, if you have a negative in the discriminant, inside a negative discriminant, so number inside the square root is negative, it's going to be no solution. So a lot of information. Quadratic formula, though, with practice is pretty easy. Thanks for watching and have a good day.